Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
I was thinking we should give Nelson one of those like director boards that he can do the slide on the set.
I was thinking of like a prod. He could just like electrify us.
Okay.
That's like a cow prod.
Yeah, we're recording. He's signaling me we're recording. Oh, we know that. We're talking about
Hi, Jeff.
Hello, Brett.
How are you?
You like the hesitation? I'm fantastic.
That's called a pregnant pause.
It is. It could be.
It is a Monday and we're recording, but yet we're full of energy.
I listened to the Practice Podcast and I noticed that...
do you give it a 5-star rating?
Yeah, I do. I frequently say that I'm happy to be recording on a fill-in-the-blank Monday, Tuesdays. Pretty much every day I'm happy to be recording. So what I've come to the conclusion is that I enjoy recording the Practice Podcast with you. So thanks for that. I just appreciate
being with you, Jeff. It doesn't have to be a podcast. I think it just enhances the time that I get to spend with you.
Yeah, you're very fortunate that you get to spend time.
I am. My two spouses. I'm very fortunate.
I'm going to float an idea on the air to you, which I think you're probably going to be mad at me about this. Because by doing so, I'm committing us to this idea.
It'll be recorded.
Well, no, we can always the recording can just maybe just miraculously get deleted. Yeah. But go ahead.
My daughter suggested this to me this weekend that you and I should have on the podcast as guests each of our fathers. Not at the same time. Look, Brett's already.
I think that's a great idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Because
I would
love to interview my father.
I want to interview Brett's father.
No, you
That's what I want. In front of Brett and watch him watch him slink down in his chair. Anyway, I don't know if we'll logistically ever make that happen, but it was an idea that I thought was really brilliant. And it's now out there.
It's out there.
Brett's going to find a way to kill this episode somehow.
Wow. Okay. I would dare you to try to get in a question with my father.
All right. Challenge accepted. Same, right? My dad is he's
old school.
An interesting man. So.
Maybe we should have the two of them record.
Just let them go.
Just give them the microphone.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
And then listen.
Have they met? I'm not sure if they've met.
I don't think they've met.
In any event, I was at a wedding this weekend and got to spend some time with family, which I don't do enough.
Very nice.
And my niece got married. Congratulations, Adriana.
Congratulations, yeah.
And it was just a lot of fun. We also don't have alcohol typically in the podcast room, so that allows for
my dad's
different kind of conversation. No, my dad will make up for your. Anyway, all right. So we have a special guest today, Brett.
I know.
All right.
I see her sitting before us.
All right. Our guest today is Melissa Medina. Melissa has over 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur, operator, investor, community leader, and philanthropist. She's a native to Miami and the co-founder and CEO of Emerge Americas, which has a mission of helping transform South Florida into a global tech hub. And they have been very successful with that endeavor. The Emerge Americas is their signature event, and it's a global tech conference held annually in Miami Beach for about 10 years, I think now. With Melissa's leadership, Emerge now attracts more than 20,000 attendees from over 50 countries. In addition to the annual conference, Emerge organizes year-round executive summits, innovation challenges, startup pitch competitions, master classes, webinars, and a world-class global accelerator program. They also publish venture activity and investment insight reports. Melissa's also a partner. I don't know how, she squeezes all this in, but she's also a partner at Medina Ventures, an early stage venture fund, as well as she's the president of the Medina Family Foundation, which has a mission to fund local initiatives that focus on mentoring children and empowering families. She also sits on the board of the Miami Foundation, and she was named by South Florida Business Journal as one of the 2023 Power Leaders in Technology. But wait, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
She's passionate about transforming Miami into a global technology hub and supporting Miami-based nonprofits who seek to empower tomorrow's leaders. And perhaps most importantly, she does all that, she's most passionate about is her 5 children. And
exhausted.
as one of 5, I'm one of 5 children. I know that's exhausting.
She's got a big coffee. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's very small
Coffee all
coffee,
the
which is
time.
amazing. Yeah.
So
It's like number 3 already, though.
this is going to be a podcast with just one question. And then you just
How do you do it?
talk. How do you do it?
How do you do it all?
Exactly. How
That's
do
it,
you do
right.
this?
Right.
Tons of support, to be honest. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Brett and Jeff, for having me on. I'm already having a great time, and we've been here 10 minutes maybe.
We're thrilled to have you. Yeah.
I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this. But how do I do it? It's just thankfully an amazing family, a great team as well. Surround myself with amazing people. And without the saying, it takes a village, like my village is huge.
Yeah.
And without that big village, I wouldn't even be here today, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a lot of support.
Kudos to you and everything you guys have done. So going back now, Emerge is 10 years.
2014, I think, was the first one.
Yeah, we
Is
opened
that
our
right?
doors.
First one, right?
We incorporated in 2012. It took us 2 years to plan the first conference. And since then, it's been 10 years since we opened our doors to the conference itself.
So now Miami is like this, very fashionable spot for people to
It's very
come
in
and
now.
tech. It's very in. You guys were clearly ahead of your time, ahead of Miami's time. And so
Yeah.
what led you to start Emerge, and what did you see and what did you envision, really? I mean, that's a 3-part question. It's a long question, but we'll start with the first one. What did you see? Sustained. What did you see and what led you to form and start Emerge?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there is a lot of context behind it and why my father and I co-founded Emerge. And that was that my father, a Cuban immigrant, came to Miami at the age of 13, has always been a serial entrepreneur. I've always sort of worked in the businesses that he's created. And his first entrepreneurial venture was launching a real estate development company in Miami in the early 80s. Long story short, he went from traditional real estate, residential and commercial, to building down the street from here, not far from here, there's a data center, fairly large data center called the NAP of the Americas.
Right, sure.
And as a real estate developer, he basically won a bid to build this data center, which would essentially be, think of it as an airport for internet traffic. And it was the only one of its kind that would be here in Miami and that would essentially service all of Latin American internet traffic. As he was building this building, he realized I not only want to build this, I am just amazed by what this is, the purpose of this building, and I want to operate it. So long story short, Terramark, which was his real estate company, transformed to Terramark Worldwide, which ended up becoming an IT infrastructure company, and sold all of his portfolio of real estate. His partners thought he was crazy. He saw this as the next industrial revolution and was really excited about it. And that's where my journey full-time working with him began, circa 2001. I worked with him for almost 10 years at Terramark Worldwide, so IT infrastructure and cloud computing company. And the company was purchased by Verizon in 2011. I give you all that context because it was from that sale essentially where my father and I sat down after and said, what were the highs and the lows of building this here in Miami? And the challenges were pretty significant. It was very difficult to hire talent. When we would travel around the world, sort of selling our products and services and building data centers, not only here, all over the world, people would always ask, why is Terramark Worldwide headquartered in Miami?
Because it didn't make sense to them, or what?
Exactly, because there was no tech ecosystem in Miami. So people thought of Miami vacation and fun, and it was a gateway to LATAM for many industries, but not really for tech or entrepreneurship. Those people were almost not saying it in a rude way, but just like, I don't understand. Why is there?
Why are you in
Why
Miami?
are you this
Right.
global company headquartered in Miami? That's where the conversation stemmed from. And my father and I said, is there anything we can do to change that? Because we, on the positive side, really felt that Miami and South Florida had all the elements to become a thriving tech and entrepreneurial ecosystem. We stayed here for 2 reasons. One, that the belief in this ecosystem, and also as an immigrant family, we're just very sort of grateful and indebted to this community. And he always felt like, I'm not leaving here. My parents made that crazy decision to put me on a boat at 13 to come here. And I landed in the best country in the world, but I also happened to land in Miami out of happenstance. And so We have deep roots here. And that's sort of where the idea stemmed from. Well, we don't know exactly what we're going to do, but we wanted to start a corporation that had a mission to help foster the tech and entrepreneurial ecosystem here in South Florida. Then it was TBD. How are we going to make that happen?
Right.
Let's establish the organization and then figure out what's the first project going to be under this mission. After doing a lot of research on established tech ecosystems, think Boston, Austin, New York, Silicon Valley, of course, Barcelona, Madrid, etc., we realized that in each of these established tech hubs, there was a few things happening, but one in particular was there was a convening of all these stakeholders. And at the time, so think 2012, there was no tech conference anywhere near Miami. There just wasn't. There wasn't even a small one. And that's where the idea sort of stemmed from, well, why don't we create a convening bringing together entrepreneurs, investors, global tech organizations, academia, and government, because we felt those are the 5 stakeholders that need to be involved. And then will people start using Miami in tech in the same sentence? That was essentially the early goal with the conference. And of course, it's been 10 years, so a lot has happened and the organization grew. We turned into a year-round effort. There's a lot more that we do now, but that's sort of the genesis of why Emerge was born.
Yeah. And I would say, I haven't gone back to study, the history of tech in Miami, but you were the spark. I mean, was there another spark before that time? I don't recall one, but it certainly happened and it happened to follow that.
If you don't recall one, then I'll take it. Right. No, I would say I think definitely played an integral role and we continue to. There were definitely other organizations around the same time where we sort of banded together. Endeavor is one of them. For example, the Knight Foundation, which helps support a lot of initiatives. But if not for them sort of funding a lot of these early opportunities within tech and entrepreneurship, I don't know if we would be where we are today. So there were a lot of players, but maybe we made the most noise. I don't know.
Yeah. Like you said, it takes a village.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Else. So you grew a family, a tech family, essentially.
Yeah. And you could look back and track the data of venture activity and number of companies that were here, from startups to scale-ups to established larger companies, and you could see the J-curve effect clearly. But then there's a huge spike after COVID.
Well, that was the other thing. Yeah. COVID certainly accelerated what was already happening. But I think everyone realized at that point, hey, we can work from anywhere. And then people thought about, wait a minute, we love vacationing in Miami. And
that was almost, we obviously never want to go through a global pandemic again. But there was certainly a silver lining, I think, for our entire state. And I think the difference was there was a foundation, as you said, Jeff. I think we had our best year ever in 2019. So we knew the spark was working. But even us as the most optimistic organizations in wanting Miami to become an established tech hub, I would say not even we would have envisioned what a global pandemic, how positively, which is crazy to say, would have affected our ecosystem. But I think the biggest catalyst was that this global lens just opened up into our state and our region and our community that wasn't there before. Like the media coverage just wasn't there before. The attention, obviously the migration of people, not only from outside of the country, but it's the first time we see such a big migration from inside the US, from these huge markets, New York, California, Chicago, Boston.
And you're seeing that. Are you seeing funding and financing as well? And tech startup and entrepreneurship? Is it starting here, or people have already started and they're coming here, or a combination?
It's both. It's definitely both. Whereas I would say before, there's always actually been a pretty strong entrepreneurial community and activity. The Kaufman Index has had us in the top 1 or 2 for years. This is maybe for the last 10 to 12 years. But the difference now is you have a lot more funding here now. So you have a lot more investors here, which we didn't have before. Transparently, our first conference in 2014, we were begging investors to come to Miami. We have these amazing companies all lined up, curated for you to see. And they're like, to go see startups in Miami? Really? You maybe spend the day at the beach, You might twist my arm.
But what time of year did your conference is?
Spring, which is great.
It's spring, right?
Yeah.
So,
March or April.
Perfect.
It's a great time of year to be in Miami.
Right.
Not a tough sell in that aspect.
Right.
But they just couldn't believe that they were actually going to find startups that they could potentially invest in. The conversation is very different now. How can we connect with those startups first? Can we have first access to them? So it's changed a lot. And there's just been a lot of validation, I think, definitely more than anything post-COVID.
Wow, amazing. I want to back up a little bit because I want to understand sort of your journey too. It's like we know your dad came here at 13. What year was that? About?
He was 1965.
65. Wow.
Yes.
Amazing. Are you an only child? You have siblings, right?
I have a brother.
You have a brother.
One brother who's a rock star, literally.
And was this, you said you started working with your dad. Is this something you wanted to do? Was it expected of you?
Great question.
How did you,
Definitely not expected from me. I think so. As you asked, I'm just one of two siblings. I have an older brother. We're 3 years apart. And he's always been artsy, liberal arts type, musician. Give him any instrument and he plays it since the age of 5. And both my parents have always been taught us anyways to follow your passion. I don't think any of them would have forced either of us to work in the family business. I was just the type of young girl, even as a 14, 15-year-old in high school, I would want to sit in the boardroom with my dad. And at the time, it was all real estate. So I was doing due diligence for him. And I just really loved business and finance, which is what I ended up studying. So I don't think it was anything pushed or expected. And there was actually a little bit of a twist in my story. And that's that I did always envision myself working at some point in the family business. I always did. But my North Star was to work in New York for a good 5 to 10 years. I was getting my master's, finishing up my master's when September 11th happened. And that sort of changed the trajectory of working in New York for me. And I thought, well, I'll come to Miami for a year or two, and then I'll go to New York for 5 or 6 or 7 years or however long. And here I am.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's just curveballs that happen. It definitely was not planned, but I will say that I always enjoyed working with my father and sort of trying to absorb as much of what he can teach me as possible.
Yeah. And we kind of previewed the idea of working with our fathers. So I don't think I love my
working.
I love my dad.
Is very
right. We're talking about having him on the podcast. I love 30 minutes. Even that's the question. Do we want to have him on the podcast? But I don't know that we could work together.
I know. No. I did work for my dad when I was in high school.
So.
And you were like, not again.
Was that ever a concern for you, or?
As I've grown up, I guess, and throughout the years, I've been working with him for a long time now, and he runs multiple other businesses and involved in Emerge. He's the chairman of the board, but not in the day-to-day either. I manage the whole organization. So throughout the years, we work less and less day-to-day, but it's never really been a concern. We really have always had a really good relationship. I think we probably drive our family crazy. I mean, if you ask them, they'd probably say, oh my gosh, any lunch or dinner, somehow there's work threaded in, even though it's subconsciously. But I think we both really enjoy it, to be honest.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm envious.
I agreed
that you have that relationship.
I really do love it.
Yeah, it's great.
So tell us about Emerge as the organization now, obviously, as it has grown and matured over the time, not just a conference and no more begging people to come. People are probably begging you guys to be involved. Tell us about that, but also what else does Emerge do? You said it's a year-long thing. Yeah,
definitely. Good question. So the conference itself, I would say, is sort of a culmination of our year's worth of work. And what does that consist of? We host probably outside of the conference another 30 to 35 smaller convenings throughout the year, from startup pitch events to investor founder summits to family office summits, all, again, sort of telling the narrative of what's happening in terms of tech and entrepreneurship and different sub-themes under that, but throughout the year. And then I think what we're also very well known for is we have a robust accelerator program. And essentially an accelerator helps startups connect with mentorship and other companies to help them scale, like provide them with tools to help them scale. We've been doing that now for 10 years. We have one cohort per year. We select 100 companies. It's an open application form. There's certain criteria you have to meet, but it's open application. It's a global application. And it's 7 weeks virtual and then culminates at the conference. So that's where the accelerator ends. So that's where I mentioned everything is sort of threaded in and comes together in person at the conference. But it's a whole build up throughout the year of different convenings, workshops, webinars, and then the accelerator right before the conference.
I would imagine that you have to work with local schools, education, right? For the talent pool. How has that grown over the years? And what have you seen in terms of the education, not just colleges, right? There's other, even before college, right? Pre-college, but also other types of schools that might be, or might feed talent into this pool.
Yeah. I think the whole landscape has definitely changed. Yeah. We work, thankfully, with all the major universities in South Florida. We have been working with them since the beginning. They were actually one of the first groups to support our effort, which was amazing. I think you could tell that they wanted more of like a knowledge-based ecosystem. They wanted more entrepreneurial programs within their universities as well. It's really neat to see them all sort of working together on these new programs, innovative programs. And in the last 10 years, I could see the difference in all of these schools. I mean, just down the street, you have Miami-Dade College, within the last few years, has opened an AI center. They opened the Idea Center, which is all about creating startups. They opened the Magic Center, which is all about AI and machine learning. FIU has a cybersecurity center. has an enormous launch pad, it's called, which is all for entrepreneurial effort. They've all done so much over the last decade, and you could see it now in the talent pool coming out of these schools. And then as far as alternative learning, because there's a lot of new sort of coding schools, for example, that didn't exist before. There's also like apprenticeship programs, upskilling. There's a lot of upskilling programs for people that have already gone to college and just want to learn, for example, some AI solutions and how they can help in their business and or the company they're creating. So the whole educational landscape is definitely changing, and I think it's going to change even more. Like the future of learning is absolutely changing, but it's really neat to see our local universities really embracing this. And there's also a lot of new universities here. Northeastern opened a campus here a year ago. Babson opened a campus here 8 or 9 years ago at this point, right down the street as well. There's talk now that Vanderbilt is opening a campus in Palm Beach. They purchased a very large site there, I think actually from UF, if I'm not mistaken, that used to own that site. So there's a lot happening. Kellogg has been here for a long time. I don't think a lot of people know that. There's a lot of universities that are not from here that are...
They have outposts here.
Yeah, it's growing.
I knew of a couple of those, but I never really put that all together.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't know the extent of...
Kellogg is in the Gables, isn't it?
Kellogg's been in the Gables for a while.
Yeah,
Northeastern just opened a beautiful new campus in Wynwood. Babson is here on Brickell. But yeah, there's a lot going on. And then...
That's exciting.
NSU in Fort Lauderdale during COVID opened up an innovation center, the Levan Center of Innovation. That's pretty fantastic. If you haven't seen it, it's really neat. It's 30 to 40 minutes from here. And it's probably one of the most robust innovation centers in our state. Really neat.
Wow.
So there's a lot going on. Each school is really like putting their...
Well, that's necessary, right, to sustain the growth that Miami has seen in this area, right?
And that's what we focus on now.
Yeah.
You nailed it. So how do we sustain this acceleration and make sure that it continues? The last thing we would want is for this to 10
Flame
steps
out.
back.
Yeah.
Right.
But I will say I was more worried about it the first 2 or 3 years after COVID because I was being cautiously optimistic and saying, you never know what can happen in the next 5 to 10 years. But I'll say right now, being born and raised here and kind of being in the thick of all of this, I don't think there's any way to really turn this back. I think the foundation is way more solid now than it ever was. These companies have put a flag here. They're hiring. I don't think there's any way of really rolling that back completely. Could it slow down? Of course.
Right. Sure. But
you asked earlier, have people left? Yes, there are people that have left. But I think the majority that I've met or that have been involved with us are here and are really loving their lives here, which is exciting. Like they're happy to be here.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. I think, like you said, the wheels are in motion essentially, and the train's not going to come to a complete halt.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Hopefully no major storm, knock wood, no major storm blows through. That might scare a few people away. But
I think I was definitely getting some calls with Milton, even though Miami, thankfully, we knew we were not going to be
spared.
We were spared and we knew that. But for folks that have never lived through a hurricane, it's terrifying. Should I go? Should I? I said, you're good here. I promise you're fine. But I understand why you're so scared. And for those that are on the West Coast, there was a lot of people that moved to Tampa, St. Pete area Because it wasn't
Same
just
thing.
Miami. I mean, there was a huge migration throughout the state. And I can't imagine having never lived through a hurricane and then seeing
the two
of them, right? Helene and Milton back to back, staring right at you. It has to be terrifying.
Yeah. Well, let's hope for
exactly.
a little break from the weather.
I didn't want to bring it up, but that is certainly a consideration, obviously.
Of course.
But I feel like every geographic area is having some issues with weather, whatever it is. So we just happen to have hurricanes, and
And luckily, technology now is allowing us to be more prepared.
Well, right,
That's
more
true.
prepared. And look, the businesses can continue. A lot of people are remote, and the technology has allowed that.
Yep, absolutely.
So what do you see moving forward in terms of eMERGE? Like, what's next? If you can preview for us, like, in our audience, like, what's next for eMERGE, and what do you see in terms of Miami? Like you said, sustaining it. I think you guys have kind of hit that, which is good. But you want to see it not just sustain, you want to see it grow.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
We want more of everything, right?
Yeah.
We want more companies to have successful exits from here. We want more companies to receive investment here.
Yeah.
We want more larger companies to set up shop here. We want more of everything. But for eMERGE next year, so the dates of the conference are March 27th and 28th at the Miami Beach Convention Center. Again, that's where we host it every year. The focus areas for next year, and kind of stemming off of a lot of seeds that we planted this year, are around AI and quantum, around fintech, which happens to be the industry that receives the most venture dollars throughout our state. So we're strong in financial technology. The next industry that is quickly catching up to finance in terms of venture activity is health tech. So we're focusing a lot on health tech next year. We have a full health tech innovation hub effort. And then across eMERGE, you'll always see threaded through just entrepreneurship and investment landscape, bringing in a lot of funds to talk about what they're seeing, valuations, et cetera, the funding landscape. And then entrepreneurship-wise, just always love, inspirational founders to tell their journeys, opportunities, and challenges they've faced. But yeah, it's AI and quantum, health tech, fintech, and then across-the-board entrepreneurship and investment, some climate tech as well, which is very, speaking of hurricanes, very relevant for us geographically, and something that we're seeing a lot more investment dollars going into, which is nice as well. It's still not up there in venture activity in our state, but it's making more waves.
Yeah, this is so exciting. And it's, to me, so impressive that you guys built a movement, that you had a vision of building a movement, and now we're literally living in it. And we're talking about leading
this,
leading it, but they had this vision and built it. And you were talking about at Brett's excellent question about education, which is so critical to this. And I think a lot of the other areas, Silicon Valley, for example, they had a feeder. I mean, they had Stanford University, right?
And don't forget Cal, your Cal grad
and the
listeners
Caltech,
might call in.
Polytechs, right? Yeah. All those.
In the Boston area, you have
Boston,
MIT.
of course, right? Yeah,
right, exactly.
Harvard,
right?
Yeah. Austin
So
has
each of
great
those
school
has
too,
it,
and town.
and you kind of built it. But the piece I'm actually interested in, which I don't think maybe they do, those other areas have it, and that is the focus on women in tech, which I think you really have pioneered, essentially. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love that area. And not only women in tech, but just underrepresented founders in general. And I think you nailed it, Jeff, when you said that is one of our biggest differentiators as an ecosystem. People ask me all the time, is Miami trying to become insert name, Silicon Valley or Boston or Austin? And I always say, no, we love those tech ecosystems. We learn from them, nothing against those ecosystems, but we are now living in a time where you can choose where you want to live and work, right? And we want Miami, one, to be an option. And two, I think our biggest strength is our diversity. No question. I mean, we are a city built by immigrants. We definitely, in terms of, if you want to talk women in tech, we're still the minority, no question. But for us, for example, at eMERGE, when you go to a tech conference, general tech conference, you're lucky if there's maybe 10% women at these conferences. We're almost at 50% with eMERGE. And that's still not enough for me, But it's clearly different than other areas of the US. And I think we need to wrap our arms around it, which is what we're doing, and sort of elevate that message. And that's something that's very near and dear to me. And I will continue doing more of that. We just had an event last week For Hispanic founders, we do the same thing to provide opportunity for Black founders, veteran founders, female founders, LGBTQ plus founders. And it's just because if you look at the numbers, all of those groups I just mentioned are still receiving very, very small percentage, if even a full percentage of funding across the US. And, we want that to change. So bridging those gaps is super important for us. And I do think that's making a difference in how people view South Florida as a tech ecosystem, and why South Florida, that definitely comes into play, along with weather and, well, putting aside the hurricanes, but for the most part,
right.
Weather and tax climate, of course, is one of the things we hear the most as to why Florida.
Right, so it's the opportunities that Emerge is providing to all of these groups and all these minority groups that have thus far are in smaller numbers sort of nationwide. And so you guys are just really focused on trying to bring women and all the other groups you mentioned along.
Absolutely.
Right?
To provide more opportunity, just give them a platform, right? Then from there, it's up to them and it's up to our network to see if the solution idea they're building is something investable. But I think just providing that opportunity and platform, we've seen great success from. Our accelerator program, where we have a cohort of 100 companies per year that I'm really excited about. Last year's cohort, or this year, we're still in 2024. This past cohort, 72% were underrepresented founders out of 100.
Wow.
And our goal for 2025, which we'll select now in January, next January, our goal is to be at over 80%. So we're really being diligent about providing that opportunity. And I mean, for me, I'm female, Hispanic, Latina, all the boxes that you're not supposed to be in tech.
Right.
I think I checked most of them.
So was there a moment recently or in the last year or so where you sat back and said, like, something happened and you said, wow, look what we've done? Was it somebody moving down, like a company moving down here, an exit, from a startup here in Miami, or something that you said, man, like Miami, like we've hit it, like we're getting there?
I think there's been multiple sort of aha moments over the last couple of years. Certainly everything you mentioned, and there's been multiple of those stories, which is really cool to see. Some we have played a pivotal role in. Some, it's just happened that we weren't a part of.
Ecosystem sort of
which is great.
Right,
and I was actually going to say that that's actually something that we're super excited to see, where there's just so much happening that perhaps we're not even touching or involved in. And that just shows that the ecosystem has really evolved. And, I think for us, we can measure it. I mean, we can measure how many people are interested in coming to Miami for our tech conference, and the quality and roles of people that are attending, and then what have been some success stories out of those collisions that happen. And we track all of that. And it's really cool to see. And we've had, in our 10 years with our accelerator, we've had over 1,000 companies now graduate that become part of our Emerge alumni network. And they've gone on to raise over $2.5 billion.
Wow.
Many of them met their investors at Emerge. One aha moment, we had an amazing female founder that made it to our top 5, not this past year, the year before. And she met Mark Cuban's right hand at Emerge, and they ended up being their lead investor.
Wow.
Yeah. So, stories like that.
I mean, that's amazing.
Stories like that happen more often and some of them we don't even know happen. Accidental collisions
hear about them,
that happen that we just can't track. But the ones that we do hear of or that we can track, it's really exciting to see. And it really has multiplied year after year. And I think that just tells me we're doing such an amazing job. It's in parallel, our ecosystem has been validated. Like, people want to be here. People are transacting more now. And, I'm here for it.
That's amazing.
It's fun.
Congratulations to you and your father and the entire organization, because for years it was always, Miami has no industry.
Right.
Tourism. Right? And so that's it. But I'd say that you guys have sort of sparked and created an industry. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah, it's amazing. What your dad did and then what you did, and you just took it to the next level. It's really it's remarkable, and thank you. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Miami community for all of that. And also the Family Foundation. I just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah.
The Family Foundation does a lot of good in this community. Can you just touch on that before we sign off?
Yeah, I think that stems from just the passion and what I mentioned early on, like about the gratitude for this community. I don't think my brother and I would have had the life we had we been born in Cuba. And I think my parents are very well aware of that. And so giving back is just a big part of our DNA. We focus a lot, it's local initiatives. We focus a lot on organizations that help either empower youth, empower families that are giving back to our community. And there's amazing nonprofits across our community, hundreds of them. So it's kind of difficult to choose. Pick, right. Yeah. But we're very passionate just specifically about ones that are helping youth. And we're going to hopefully be able to continue to help as much as we can.
Amazing. Love it.
Awesome.
We subscribe to that on a different level, I think. But just the idea that if you do well, you have an obligation to do good. And it sounds like you guys, your family is living that on many multiples.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this platform.
Yeah.
On the practice pod.
Yeah. No, and I neglected to mention that you were a speaker. I mean, maybe your biggest accolade is that you were a speaker.
It was.
Not maybe. I mean, it definitely is her all-time achievement.
It was in bold there.
Forum, right. I forgot to mention that you were a speaker at our forum.
Yeah. I mean, that's the star. That's the North Star, is that she was a speaker.
That was fun.
Okay. Yes. Anyway, this is fun. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show, share it with your friends and family. And if you feel so inclined, give a review.
5-star.
Yeah.
5 estrellas.
Thank you.
Yes.
Should we have Melissa read out in Spanish? Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks, Brett. So much fun.
Nelson, thanks as always. Jeff.
Nelson.
As always, it is my pleasure.
No, it might be, but it's a greater pleasure for me. What a greater honor.
Dad's on the pod.
Dad's on the pod. Let's go.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @fastamron.